What is the difference between a condo and a co-op? Something that came up when I was filming and putting together the video about living in the Southwest waterfront that I did recently was the differences between a condo and a co-op. As I was going through the numbers there are quite a few co-op buildings, so you're seeing strange figures. Whereas a typical DC condo may cost like $450,000 to $800,000, and the condo fee is going to be like $250 to $850 a month. Going through the real estate section, I'm realizing that I'm saying all sorts of crazy numbers. Like this one costs $80,000 and the condo fee is $2,300 a month. So in order to clarify why the numbers in the Southwest waterfront condo co-op market are all over the place, I wanted to put this together to explain the difference between condos and co-ops. There are a ton of co-ops in Southwest DC compared to the rest of the DMV market. This is due to the fact that pretty much all of Southwest DC was torn down and rebuilt starting in the 1950s, 60s through the 70s. And cooperatives or co-ops were a very popular way of structuring apartment-style living during that time period. So Southwest Waterfront has just sort of taken the advantage there. They have the most co-ops per square foot, if that's what you're looking for. There are co-ops throughout the DC area, and in fact, before making this video, I looked it up. There's 119 current active available co-op listings in the DMV, mostly in DC, some in Bethesda, some in Arlington. Now, when you compare that to the condo market, where there's over 1,000 current active listings, you can see that co-ops are a much smaller percentage of the market. If you're looking at a 2-bedroom unit in a building, odds are you're going to end up finding a condo and not a co-op. However, if you are looking specifically in the Southwest waterfront, you'll want to keep all this in mind because you're much more likely to come across them there. Other noteworthy co-op buildings in the area are the Watergate Complex in Foggy Bottom and River Place in Arlington, which for the time being dominates the space that would be the very best views of the Washington DC skyline. So what is the difference? When you purchase a co-op, rather than actually buying the real property, the land, the unit itself, you're actually buying shares in a corporation. You end up with a certain number of shares based on square footage, based on the size of the unit, and a lease that covers the individual unit. And that gives you a right to be involved, to run for, and be part of the board of directors, potentially. Condos have a very similar board. One big difference is that many people that go for cooperatives and live there long term really do get into the community spirit, so they do tend to be much more active, larger boards, which tend to be more collaborative. A lot of the owners do stay there quite a long time, and they take pride in the community. Sometimes people purchasing a condo may be looking for a quicker return on investment before they move up to a larger home or row home or single family home. They tend to be in and out a little bit quicker. A lot of co-op owners really do like the communities that they're in, and they take a lot of pride in helping manage and organize and work for the common cause of the community. So the main difference is, as we just mentioned, is the fact that you don't technically own the land. So it's not the same as a typical real property transaction. You're not paying the same type of real estate taxes. However, there is a ground lease involved. So whenever the building was developed, somebody owned the land. Oftentimes that's the original developer of the building. And the members of the co-op continue to pay a ground lease, which is rent on the land which the building occupies. These leases are very long term. They can go on for hundreds of years and often adjust in price after 30 years or so. The difference in the fees that you're paying monthly on a condo versus a co-op is that with a condo, typically what you're paying is for building maintenance, larger projects such as repaving the parking, air conditioning towers, elevators, swimming pool, security, things like that. In a co-op, you're paying for all those items as well as your share of the ground lease and a little more of the maintenance costs. Which brings us to one of the advantages of purchasing a co-op is that you do have a little less maintenance. The building tends to handle more of the maintenance than they do in a condo. In a co-op, they also typically cover items within the walls. As long as it's not the fault of the co-op owner's negligence, the building will maintain the pipes and leaks and things like that, some of the major building systems. And often with a co-op, even things like repainting front doors, windows, items like that are usually put on the condo owner's plate are the co-op's responsibility. So the owners do have less maintenance to be responsible for. Between the extra services that the buildings tend to offer, the ground lease on the land itself, and the master insurance policy being high as well, a co-op fee can really get up there because of those higher monthly fees, and also because you don't technically own the land the way that you do in a condo. The values tend to appreciate much slower. For a co-op, you could get a one-bedroom for $80,000. Not just a parking space, an entire one-bedroom co-op, or a two-bedroom for like $175 to $220, something in that range. So you're not putting as much money towards your mortgage payment, but you do have the higher monthly fees. All that being said, you're going to have some sort of monthly fee in a building because they do have the building maintenance to take care of. The other big difference between a co-op and a condo is that with a co-op, they'll have an interview process. The co-op review board will go through the sales contract, make sure that it meets their standards, and have an interview with any potential buyer in the community. If you're a purchaser, potential buyer who has made a contract on a unit in a co-op community, just know you're most likely going to have to go for a live interview in person or via Zoom. I went to one of these meetings with one of my buyer clients, and I can tell you they do tend to be a bit intimidating. Come into the room, ours was via Zoom. There were 43 people there, plus the buyers and agents that were there for the interviews that month. And I know my client was incredibly nervous. I read a funny comment on Reddit when I was getting ready for this video, where a user wrote, "What good is a co-op? It seems the only advantage to a co-op is being able to discriminate against who your neighbors are." And that concern is brought up. What are they looking for in this interview process? It's really hard to say. They could potentially subvert some of the fair housing safeguards that we have in place during a typical real estate transaction, which is frustrating, especially in DC, where they have even more fair housing regulations in place than all the other states do. It can be a little off-putting when you don't know exactly what they're looking for. A lot of co-op boards actually require a higher down payment than a condo building does. Some co-op boards actually require that the full purchase price is paid upfront in cash. So that's some of the stuff that they're looking for when they go through the interview and review process and review the sales contract and documents that are in place for the sale. They're also going to look at the reserves that the purchaser has to make sure that they're going to be able to make their co-op payments, much like a lender would look at when you're getting your loan. I think typically that's what they're mostly looking for, and they're not really trying to subvert any fair housing regulations. So the co-op review board will have the final say as to whether you're approved or not. Co-op boards tend to have more rules when it comes to leasing out the individual units. So if you've purchased a co-op and you're living there, you may have to live there for 2 or 5 years before you're allowed to rent it, or the community may have a higher number of owners that they require to live in the units than a condo will. So you may be prevented from renting yours out if there are already several owners renting theirs, that type of things. Sometimes they have requirements of waiting to resell the units for a certain number of years. So there are just more regulations overall. The idea is to make the cooperative more of a long-term investment. So those are the main differences. I think I'll leave it up to you which one's right for you. There are some nice little advantages to owning in a co-op. The ease, you are technically a leasee, so you don't have quite as much maintenance to do. More is covered under a co-op's responsibility than a condo's. Being able to resolve potential situations through the co-op board rather than one-on-one with your neighbor. There is the initial lower price. Other than the interview process and the sometimes much more harsh purchasing standards. So whether a co-op is right for you really does depend a lot on what you're looking for in your investment. If you're looking for an investment that you can buy and then go ahead and turn around and sell it in 2 to 5 years, like a typical DC property purchase, having made a 5, 10, 20% return on investment, you probably are not going to get that with a co-op. A co-op, you would really want to be looking at long-term. The values don't appreciate as quickly. Sometimes a co-op purchase will take longer because of the co-op board review process. It can be nice to work with a realtor who's familiar with co-op situations and can help guide you to the correct buildings or through the process very clearly, so you don't hit any big snags as you're going through the purchase process. Everything we do on this channel is meant to make your move to or within the DC area easier on you, so please make sure you subscribe so you don't miss something that could help. As always, I'd love to continue the conversation in the comments below. I always love hearing from our community and getting to touch base with them in the comments or when they reach out via text or email with their own more particular real estate questions about the neighborhoods, the market, or I'm always very happy to help our YouTube viewers that would like me to be their realtor to help them find and purchase or rent a home in the DC area. Thanks again, take care, and I hope to see you next time.